Can you tell me your title at the European Union and what your responsibilities are?
I'm Isabelle Hubert. I'm the country desk for Ethiopia, and I am in charge of Ethiopia at the European Commission Directorate General for International Partnership. But, I also want to say on record that I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the Commission, okay?
Okay.
So, you can record, but,
okay.
I cannot speak on behalf of the Commission.
It doesn't matter if you are authorized or not. Since you work with the EU and since you are a country director of Ethiopia at the European Union, I just want you to have an understanding of what's going on here in Ethiopia. Whenever you have a meeting, whenever you have to do a reporting to your colleagues at the European Union, I just want you to have this information that I'm going to present to you so that you will be fully understanding of the situation in Ethiopia. I have prepared a little bit of presentation, so I'll be reading from my computer so that I don't miss anything while talking, okay? Will that be okay if I am reading?
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you very much. I named my presentation Ethiopia Under Siege. Who's right and who's wrong? It's not that members of the European Union do not know, but just as a reminder, I'd like to tell you that Africa is the largest continent and the richest in the world in its natural resources. While being the largest continent and providing all the necessary raw materials for the world's industrialization, and having the same population as China with a mass land 4 times larger, Africa is termed as the poorest and overpopulated. A lot of reasons can be given as to why Africa stays poor, while providing all the natural resources for the Western world's development. But one of the main reasons is the fact that Africa heavily depended on readily available aids from the developed world and is still too naive to wake up and start looking inside its own realm, making a little bit of sacrifice of comfort from its leaders and dig into its own abundant natural resources. I dare to tell you that the colonial aggression of some of the European countries is to blame for Africa to stay poor to this day. But our dependence on the developed world for our basic needs has to stop someday, and I think the time is now. For Africa to start using its own resources towards its growth, what we need the most is visionary, knowledgeable, uncorrupt leaders who love their country more than themselves in each African state. When an African country finds that visionary and uncorrupt leader, we will stop being submissive to unfair Western dominance. When Africans start being led by knowledgeable, confident leaders, that Western world will respect us as an equal partner and start discussing about issues that are mutually beneficial instead of interfering in our detailed internal affairs in the name of peacemaking so that we keep fighting each other their proxy war and stay poor. When the day comes for Africa to find that visionary, loving, again uncorrupt leader that prioritizes African unity instead of following the divide and rule that colonialists exerted on us, that day Africa will stop taking aid and start working with its unified citizens that can create miracles with more than 1 billion souls and minds combined towards unstoppable prosperity. My friends in the European Union, like I have mentioned before, Africa is the largest continent in the world with 54 countries in it and almost 1.4 billion people. Ethiopia is one of the 54 rich but poor countries with a population of 112 million. I am sure you know that Ethiopia is a country of the oldest civilization in Africa and one of the few in the world with more than 3,000 years of history to tell. Almost all those 3,000 years, Ethiopia was led by a government of its own with a trade route to Far East, India, the Middle East, Europe, and other African neighbors, and the citizens of Ethiopia never had serious issues regarding tribalism. All the tribes in Ethiopia are known to have been married to each other and raised mixed tribe children. I myself am a product of that intertribal marriage with nowhere to go if Ethiopia is disintegrated across ethnic lines. As a matter of fact, more than 35% of Ethiopians cannot line themselves into one specific tribe, since they descend from parents from different ethnic groups. The first Ethiopian problem that presented the dangers of separatism began in Ethiopia in the 18th century when the 3,000 years of unified government was put on hold and the country was divided into a lot of different provinces led by their own kings, and the era called Zemene Mesafint was created to continue for almost a century. During this period, Ethiopia lost its prominence in the global map and was too weak to matter to the rest of the world. War broke between the provinces to control highlands and fertile lands. A lot of Ethiopians died because of this. This era is the time when Ethiopia's hope to become one of the world's biggest economy was tarnished. During this period, Ethiopia has seen its share of separatism and its consequences. Our history teaches us that unity is always our strength, and we fail as a country when we are divided. After almost 90 years of darkness in Ethiopia, King Theodros II, a self-proclaimed king with no royalty background, fought with almost all the regional leaders and brought the country back together in the mid-19th century. Since 1855, Ethiopia, as we know it on the world map, was created and has become the only African country never to have been colonized by the Europeans, and became the source of pride for all black people around the world. In fact, it's worth mentioning that a British statesman named Edmund Burke testified in the British Parliament about 300 years ago, I quote, "We shall not disintegrate, and will stay united like the Abyssinians," unquote, Abyssinia being Ethiopia's erstwhile name. When the Egyptians, who are avowed enemies of Ethiopia since the 11th century, tried to control the source of Nile River in Ethiopia, King Yohannes, a king who rose from the Tigray region but ruled all over Ethiopia, gave the Egyptians an embarrassing defeat twice at the Battle of Gura and Gundat. King Yohannes fought with the Egyptians and defeated them to protect his country, Ethiopia, from their invasion. King Yohannes was martyred in the Battle of Metemma, fighting with the Mahadist terrorists from Sudan while defending motherland Ethiopia. Ras Alula Abba Nega, another great Ethiopian general from Tigray, fought besides other Ethiopians from all over the nation against the Italian and the Egyptian aggressors to defend his motherland Ethiopia. Then came King Mnilik II, who reigned after King Yohannes IV and introduced the modern government system in Ethiopia, who is known to have kept Ethiopia's unity intact, and most of all, who led the war against Italy's colonial aggression at the Battle of Adwa and became the first black leader to show the world that black is power as well when united. In the Battle of Adwa, a lot of Ethiopians from the Tigray tribe fought beside the Oromos, the Amharas, the Gurages, the Afar, the Somalis, the Kafas, the Sidamas, and all the tribes from all over Ethiopia to defend their motherland. Never in the history of Ethiopia have we heard or read Ethiopians in Tigray seeking secession from their motherland till the emergence of the communist TPLF in the mid-1970s. And our unity and patriotism is the only reason for us to withstand all the enemies of Ethiopia. Then came King Haile Selassie in 1930, who is considered the father of the African Union when it was established in Addis Ababa, who was also a founding member of the United Nations, and an African king who sent troops to Korea to help win their war. The Italians tried to conquer Ethiopia and stayed for 5 years fighting with the Ethiopian heroes again. But the Ethiopians won the war and the Italians were defeated for the second time. And again, Ethiopia's unity, regardless of their differences in tribe and religion, was our main source of strength to defeat the Italian aggressors out of Ethiopia. Haile Selassie stayed in power for 46 years and kept the nation's unity and integrity intact without having issues of secession from any ethnic group in the country. During all this time, the whole wide world knows what Ethiopia's map looked like.
We can see it.
Okay, here. This is the old map. This is the old map that Ethiopia had before the Tigrayans came to power in 1991. Here in this map, which the whole wide world knows and which you can easily find on the internet by just typing old Ethiopian map. You see the Tigrayan region?
Yes, I can see it.
The Tigrayan region is bordered between the Afar and the Amhara region. It has no access to the Sudanese border. This is an old map that we used to have for hundreds of years before the Tigrayans came to power in Ethiopia. You can easily find this map on the internet, on the Google map. Just type the old Ethiopian map. So this is the map we know, we grew up with, we learned at school, and we have received from our ancestors for hundreds of years. In this map, you see that Tigray is bordered between the Amhara region and the Afar region. It has no access to the Sudanese border. Now, this is the map we used to know. This is the map we received from our ancestors, right? During all this time, the whole wide world knows what Ethiopia's map looked like. It's not a newly created map. It's been there for hundreds of years. Right after King Haile Selassie's demise, when Mengistu Haile Mariam took power in Addis Ababa, a group of 7 young, immature students from Addis Ababa University and their friends who did not even complete their second-year term went into the Tigrayan mountains and established the communist TPLF, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, with a dream of forming a greater Tigray as a country seceding from Ethiopia. With the Derg regime's dictatorial mistakes and ideological mishaps, the TPLF group through time was able to get ground in Tigray and won the hearts and minds of the Tigrayan people. Just because Mengistu Haile Mariam's worsening leadership was not accepted throughout the country, the TPLF was also able to convince the Amhara and Oromo elites to establish a coalition party called the EPRDF, which finally made the TPLF put their primary ambition of seceding from Ethiopia on hold and grab the power to lead the country as a whole. This is the time when Ethiopia's worst nightmare started taking place. Till this critical moment in time, Ethiopia's map still looked like this, the one I just showed you. And Ethiopians never had major tribal problems except some workable issues here and there, mostly coming from cattle shepherds and fertile land controversies. Rather, the main problem we had with Mengistu Haile Mariam's leadership was the fact that his reign was marked with brutal dictatorship, prolonged civil war, and famine. We often hear the TPLF bragging that they freed Ethiopians from the Marxist Derg regime and are the champions of ethnic freedom. But let me show you one 2-minute video of CNN just so you have an idea of how Ethiopians felt when the EPRDF introduced tribal politics in Ethiopia.
Appeal to Ethiopian officials for aircraft to fly supplies where they are desperately needed. Just how bad the situation really is in Ethiopia is difficult to determine because it is difficult to get unbiased information out of the highly volatile war zone. But one reporter who recently left the region managed to sneak out some forbidden footage. Lindsay Taylor has this account of his stay in Ethiopia.
No runway lights, airport navigation aids switched off, no one responding to radio messages. This was our first hint of what a country in revolution is like. One of Africa's busiest airports, all but deserted. The empty control tower adding to the eerie atmosphere. But we were not alone. Instead of ground staff, we found young rebel soldiers. Tigrayan troops now controlling the airport. A 24-hour curfew had been enforced after the brief but fierce battle against forces loyal to the ousted dictator Mengistu. Despite the battle scars, this seemed to be a remarkably peaceful revolution. In neighbouring Somalia, thousands were massacred when the rebels seized control of Mogadishu. But here, despite the ease of entry, the Army of Liberation was not welcomed with open arms.
Are most people happy
to see the rebels here, most of these people here?
በአሁን ጊዜ ተደስታችሁ ወይ ሰላም ነው ወይ እነዚህ የሞቱ የገቡት ብሎ እየጠየቀ አንዳንዳችሁ እንትን የደስታ ስሜት ካላችሁ መናገር ትችላላችሁ። No, absolutely no. We are in prison. We are in prison. We have no democracy. We are under the gun.
However much their hatred of Mengistu, many people in the capital, the EPRDF, made up of mainly Tigrayan soldiers from the north, was like an occupying army.
In this video, it shows that Ethiopians are never happy with the occupation of the Tigrayan force in Ethiopia in 1991. As a matter of fact, one of Ethiopians' icon, the person saying in the video, "We are under the gun," he says. It's a CNN video that was recorded in 1991, at the time when the Tigrayan force came to Ethiopia and took the power with a gun. The person who is saying "we are under the gun" is our icon and human rights activist Taman Bayena, who was forced to leave his motherland and has been in exile in Washington, D.C. for more than 25 years just because he campaigned against tribal politics and separatism. The first thing the PRDF did as soon as they grabbed the political power was disband the biggest military army in the sub-Saharan Africa. Since the TPLF manifesto clearly states that Amhara people are inherent enemies of Tigray, they started targeting the Amhara people in all arenas, including annexing territories bordering with Sudan to the west and fertile lands to the northeast. Then they divided the country into 11 ethnic-based geographical locations and changed the name of the provinces to their respective tribal names. And so that people say "we are from this tribe" instead of saying "we are from this place." For instance, you have visited Lalibela. So a person who comes from Lalibela has to say he is from Lalibela. But he is forced to say that he is from the Amhara region, because they designed the people of Ethiopia to hate each other because of their tribes. They also introduced this map. The newly introduced map takes land from the Amhara region and gives the land of the Amhara region that borders with Sudan to the Tigrayans. Now it's the source of the dispute between the Tigrayan people and the Amhara people, saying that they own the land. But the land was originally occupied, was a natural ownership of the Amhara people. They took that land just 30 years ago when they came to power, because that land has an access to the Sudanese border and it's also the most fertile land in Ethiopia. Dear my friends in the European Union, just so you know what we have been through for the last 27 years under TPLF's new constitution of ethnic politics was forced on Ethiopians right around the time when almost 1 million people were massacred in Rwanda due to this very same ethnic politics. The Ethiopian military was reorganized in order for the TPLF to be the makers and shakers of Ethiopia's future, with 90% of the military leaders assigned from the Tigray region. Ethiopia's banks were directed to lend money mostly to TPLF supporters from the Tigray region. Farm and urban land allotments throughout the country were mostly for TPLF supporters from the Tigray region. Priorities were given for traders from the Tigray region for foreign currency allotment so that they get the cream of the import business first. Bigger government tenders were all given only to TPLF members and supporters. A capital flight of more than $35 billion was done by the TPLF from this poor country. More than 85% of representatives and diplomats assigned at the developed countries were TPLF supporters from the Tigray region, and almost all higher positions of the Ethiopian embassies in these countries were occupied by people from Tigray. A lot of mega projects, including the Grand Renaissance Dam and the Tandaho sugar plant, were launched either with the Ethiopian taxpayers' money or money borrowed from the international financiers in the name of Ethiopia. None of them were finalized except the railway projects, and the corruption behind these projects were to untold proportion, with the TPLF leaders bleeding the country to its bone. Dear friends, during all the 27 years under TPLF, not a year passed without a protest against the PRDF here in Ethiopia and every state in Europe and America. More than 20,000 people were blacklisted not to ever return to their country just because they protested against tribal politics. Thousands of people were killed, tortured, or disappeared for standing against TPLF's separatism ideology. As a matter of fact, some radio journalists were warned and were told to stop saying, "Long live Ethiopia." To stop saying, "Long live Ethiopia." Our leaders for the last 27 years hated the name Ethiopia being mentioned. Simply put, the TPLF leaders were maybe the only politicians who led a country that they hated the most and that they wanted to destabilize for 27 years. After 27 years, Ethiopians couldn't take it anymore. And demonstrations of protests erupted in every region all over Ethiopia. The TPLF killed as many as they could, but could not stop the demonstrations and could not threaten the angry youth by their killings.
Ijoolleen Wallaggaa jirtu, ijoolleen Arsii jirtu, ijoolleen Tuulamaa jirtu, ijoolleen Maccaa jirtu, eessa jirtu? Boolee jirra jedha, eessa jirtu? Boolee jirra. Falmadhu qeerroosii abdiin sabaa yoomillee, abdiin sabaa yoomillee, abdiin sabaa yoomillee, abdiin sabaa yoomillee.
Mariam became the first in Africa to resign from serving as a puppet prime minister to the TPLF group. The TPLF was forced to leave power after 27 years of looting the country to its core. And the current prime minister, Abiy Ahmed, came to power with a promise to bring the country together and also with a promise to make peace with Eritrea. The TPLF knew their time has come to take it to the north and start working towards their hidden agenda of secession. Unusually in Africa, the new prime minister allowed the TPLF members to take whatever they looted and live peacefully in their region. But the TPLF forces wouldn't take it in staying without power. Their hunger for power wouldn't let go. They started using the money they looted to buy greedy messengers within different states of Ethiopia and funded extremists to kill their own races brutally. The new Ethiopian government literally begged the TPLF forces to stop their evil deeds to an elephant's ear. And the TPLF forces attacked the military base with more than 75% of the nation's weaponry and killed thousands of soldiers who have been protecting them for 20 years and vowed to wage war against Ethiopia. The Ethiopians' defense force retaliated, took over the weapons, and the Amhara militia took back the land that has been taken by force from it 30 years ago. Dear my friends, this is what the war looks like with all its background. Ethiopian National Defense Force has won the war at the battlefront, but it is defeated with the diplomatic war and the propaganda. Diplomacy in the developed world is all about money, lobbyists, connection, and nepotism. The TPLF leaders have done their job well by assigning their members and supporters like Dr. Theodros of WHO so that they disseminate their fabricated information when the day comes. The new Ethiopian government didn't get enough time to work on all these fields before the war took its full course. It looks like the American government and the European Union are biased and are sympathizing with the TPLF forces who have been declared terrorists by the Ethiopian parliament. We Ethiopians are sad to hear that well-respected organizations like the European Union can easily be manipulated by baseless and misleading informations of the TPLF. But I tell you now that helping the TPLF means destabilizing the Horn of Africa. Let me show you their ambitious map so that you understand where they are heading. The new map they have introduced for the Ethiopians is, it takes the Grand Renaissance Dam from Ethiopia, it takes some land from all the western Ethiopian land, fertile lands, it stretches over to the port of Eritrea. That is their ambitious map. They are attacking Ethiopia. They are the ones who are sending troops to attack, to take over land that doesn't belong to them. So, if you want a strong nation in the Horn of Africa, please help your friends in the European Union to stand with Ethiopia. If you are confused whom to trust, just take your hands off Ethiopia. Tell your friends at the European Union to take their hands off Ethiopia. And let us solve our problems the way we can. We are a country of 112 million people. Ethiopia is facing a challenge from a group that claims to represent 5 million people who are suffering because of TPLF's barbarian atrocities themselves. TPLF and its naive supporters are the ones killing people and taking over lands of other Ethiopians. The Ethiopian government has a responsibility to protect its citizens from a genocide like this and bringing these criminals to justice. The Ethiopian people have spoken to the world and elected their leaders they want with an election that was held a few months ago. Ethiopia has no weapons of mass destruction. Ethiopia has no nuclear reactor. We have no history of supporting any terrorist group. Ethiopians have never conquered anyone's land and don't have a terrorist training camp. This war for Ethiopian government is about protecting its people from barbarians originated from within its territories. This war for the Ethiopian government is with people who officially vote to go to hell if necessary to destroy their own country in order for them to build their fantasy land. What's Ethiopia's crime to be hindered from defending its integrity and sovereignty? What is the fault line here? If TPLF is on the right path, we wouldn't have had 100 million Ethiopians asking for the TPLF to be removed. If the TPLF had support as they claim, we wouldn't have had Ethiopians demonstrating every day to support the Ethiopian government. So, please, I beg you again, please report to the European Union that Ethiopia is following the right path, Ethiopia is defending its sovereignty and integrity, and Ethiopia is fighting to save its people. The Ethiopian Defense Force and the Ethiopian military is fighting with the TPLF to save its people from TPLF aggression. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your time. Now, I'm ready to answer if you have any question. I really, really thank you for listening to me patiently.
Well, I have a question. Maybe Mark, Mark, do you have something or?
No, I just wanted to thank you. Like I said, I mean, we are a representative of the European Commission, so we are not allowed to take a political stance with regard to what is happening in Ethiopia. This is clear. But what is also clear is that we don't wish, of course, to weaken Ethiopia. I mean, we need altogether a strong Ethiopia. So, and we are there to help the suffering population. This is clear. Whatever would happen in the future, we will still be there in Ethiopia, in all parts of Ethiopia, to help for the population suffering from the different crises. This is clear. Now, with regard to the political situation, we cannot afford to give any comments. So thank you for your plea. This plea will be also through us, explained within the European institution. This is clear, but I cannot afford to comment on the political stance you have. But this is clear that for the population, we will always be with Ethiopia, and we cannot afford to lose or to put anybody from Ethiopian population aside from the European help.
Thank you very much.
Isabelle.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Teddy, because it was really informative and very complete, and it's really nice of you to have taken the time this morning to speak to us and to really share your views. I mean, we really appreciate that a lot. And but yesterday evening I watched your movie, and I knew, of course, the heartbreak of the people who leave their own country, and the danger, the life-threatening condition and everything.